So there's this old saying in finance that everybody always repeats.
Buy the rumor, sell the news.
Right, buy the rumor, sell the news, and it's usually about, an iPhone launch or a corporate merger or something.
Or an earnings report, yeah?
Exactly. But I want to know what happens when that rumor is war.
Oh, wow.
And I don't mean just like a border skirmish. I mean something massive.
That is really the question of the hour right now.
Right.
Because usually we look at headlines to understand the world. We wait for the press conference.
Right.
But sometimes the financial markets react before the ink is even dry on the newspaper. Money just moves faster than public perception.
It really does. And that is exactly what we are unpacking today for you. We are looking at a very specific, honestly, very loud signal coming from the global markets as of late February 2026.
It's deafening if you know where to look.
Right. We've got a stack of sources here for this deep dive. Financial reports from the defense sector, military deployment updates from outlets like Axios and CBS News, and summaries of diplomatic talks that,
That didn't go well.
yeah, let's just say they didn't go great.
To put it mildly, yeah.
Hmm.
And the mission for this deep dive is pretty straightforward, I think. We want to decode what a sudden simultaneous spike in defense stocks, both in the US and Europe, actually tells us about the likelihood of military action against Iran.
Because we are trying to move past the political rhetoric, right? We want to look at where the actual capital and the actual aircraft carriers are moving.
Because politicians spin things.
Politicians definitely spin things, but money usually doesn't lie.
That's the premise here. Moving a billion-dollar warship is a form of truth. And moving millions of dollars into defense stocks overnight, that is also a form of truth.
So let's start with the money. Tuesday was just a wild day for defense stocks.
It really was.
We saw a surge that wasn't just a random fluctuation, it felt incredibly coordinated.
Yeah, it was a sector-wide rally. And when you see that, it implies that investors are pricing in a specific event. It's not just one company having a good quarter.
Right.
If we look at the U.S. markets first, the ETFs kind of tell the whole story.
The index funds, yeah.
Exactly. The SPDR S&P Aerospace and Defense ETF, which is basically a basket of all the heavy hitters, that jumped 2% in a single day.
Wow.
And the Global X Defense Tech ETF went up even more, climbing 2.7%.
And for anyone listening who doesn't just, stare at tickers all day, 2% for a whole sector in one day is a massive move.
It's huge.
It's not a normal Tuesday. It's a something big is happening move that represents billions in market cap just appearing out of nowhere.
Precisely. And if you drill down into these specific contractors, you see exactly the names you'd expect to see.
Big guys.
Yeah. L3Harris Technologies was up 1.6%. General Dynamics up 1.3%. Lockheed Martin up 1%.
And these are the companies that make the hardware for sustained conflict. They build the planes, the systems.
Right. But here is where it gets really interesting. And this was the part of the data that actually made me pause.
Oh, the European numbers.
Yes, the U.S. numbers were up, sure. But the European defense stocks, they were absolutely on fire.
That is the anomaly we really need to pay attention to. Because while the U.S. majors were up, 1 or 2%, look at Europe, Thales rose 5.9%.
Almost 6%?
Yeah. Leonardo advanced 5.4%. Rheinmetall increased 5%.
That is more than double the U.S. gains.
More than double. So why the discrepancy? Why is Europe freaking out, or rather, why are investors in Europe betting so much harder on this?
It really comes down to the type of war the market is pricing in and proximity.
Okay, unpack that.
Well, if the U.S. strikes Iran, the U.S. homeland is basically safe. The Atlantic Ocean is a fantastic buffer.
Right, the fighting happens over there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But Europe doesn't have that luxury. A massive conflict in the Middle East destabilizes Europe almost immediately.
Through, refugee flows?
Refugee flows, massive energy shocks, security threats on their southern flank. It's in their backyard.
So European investors are basically panic buying protection.
It's partly that, but look at what those specific companies actually make. Rheinmetall, for example, is the world's leading producer of artillery ammunition and tank parts. Thales is huge in defense electronics and radar. When you see Rheinmetall jump 5%, the market isn't betting on a few U.S. cruise missiles being fired.
They're betting on a logistical grind.
Yes. High volume, sustained ground reality. They are betting that Europe is going to need to drastically restock its own magazines because the U.S. is about to be very, very busy elsewhere.
That is a chilling distinction.
It is.
Because Lockheed being up 1% says, okay, air power, but Rheinmetall up 5% says sustained supply chain stress.
Exactly. It is the difference between a quick police action and shifting into a war economy. The European markets are signaling that they expect this to get very messy and they expect it to last.
So the market is effectively saying this isn't just going to be a few targeted drone strikes.
Right. When you see Rheinmetall up 5%, the market is betting that peace is officially off the table for the immediate future. They are buying the portfolio of war.
And that leads us directly to the why. Because these stock movements didn't just happen in a vacuum.
No, they coincided with some incredibly alarming reporting.
Exactly. Reporting about what the Trump administration is actually planning right now. We have to connect these financial gains to the military reality on the ground.
And the reporting from Axios is crucial here. They cited sources, actual officials, who are explicitly distinguishing this potential operation from what we might be used to seeing.
Yeah, they used a very specific phrase. They said officials are describing the potential operation as resembling, quote, all-out war rather than a quick surgical operation.
And that distinction is everything.
It really is.
Because surgical means you hit a radar site, maybe you take out a specific commander, and you go home. It's a scalpel.
Right.
All-out war is a sledgehammer. It implies a campaign. It implies aiming for regime stability, wiping out infrastructure, broad military capabilities.
Which perfectly explains why the stock market reaction is so heavy.
Exactly. Investors are betting on a prolonged, resource-intensive event because that is what the officials are telegraphing.
And then there is the timeline, because usually these things take months of buildup. But CBS News dropped a report that feels immediate.
Very immediate. CBS reported that senior national security officials have explicitly told President Trump that the armed forces are prepared to launch attacks as early as this weekend.
And remember, for context, we are looking at this in late February 2026. So this weekend basically means the turn of the month.
Yes, within days.
That is incredibly fast. It's not we're drawing up plans. It's we're ready to go right now.
Now, the president hasn't made the final decision yet, according to the reports. We have to be clear about that. But the capability is sitting there. And when we look at the hardware buildup, it matches that all-out war rhetoric completely.
Let's list that hardware out, because the sheer amount of metal in the water right now is staggering. We are talking about 2 aircraft carriers.
Which is the standard U.S. signal for we are extremely serious. 1 carrier is a presence. 2 carriers is a threat.
A major threat. Plus about a dozen warships. Hundreds of fighter jets. And advanced air defense systems deployed right near Iranian territory.
But, you know, there was one detail in that Axios report that really stood out to me more than anything else.
The surge.
The 24-hour surge.
Yeah.
It wasn't just the stuff that's been sitting there for weeks.
Right. Approximately 50 additional fighter jets were deployed to the Middle East in just the last 24 hours.
That's the detail that should keep people up at night.
Why specifically the 50 jets?
Because you don't rush 50 jets halfway across the world for a training exercise. Think about the logistics of doing that.
It's massive.
To move 50 airframes in one single day means you have cleared the airspace across multiple countries. You have pre-positioned aerial fuel tankers over the ocean. You have maintenance crews on the ground waiting for them.
Right.
You do not burn that kind of jet fuel and logistical capital just to show off. You do that when you have a target list and a very specific window of time to hit it.
So it's an operational surge. It signals that the planning phase is over and the kinetic phase, the shooting phase, is about to begin.
Exactly. It signals intent. It is very easy to fake a press release. It is incredibly hard to fake a 50-jet deployment in 24 hours. That is real money and real risk.
Okay, so we have the stocks screaming war, and we have the military moving jets like it's D-Day. But surely there are people talking, right? What about diplomacy? We heard about these talks in Geneva.
There were talks, yes.
Yeah.
On Tuesday. But if you actually look at the outcome of those talks, it reinforces the pessimistic view that the market is already taking.
Okay, so let's break that down. Who was actually in the room?
It was indirect talks.
Yeah.
But to the U.S. side, you had Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff.
Which, by the way, tells you everything you need to know about how this is being handled. This is being run directly out of the inner circle.
Not through the standard State Department bureaucracy.
Yeah.
That's a vital observation. When you send Kushner, you aren't sending a career diplomat with a binder of standard protocols. You are sending a direct proxy for the President of the United States.
And they spent 3.5 hours discussing things with Iranian officials.
Which is a long time.
It is. 3.5 hours isn't just a quick meet and greet. That is a long time to sit in a room and hash things out.
It is. But the narratives coming out of that room afterward could not be more different. And this disconnect is a classic textbook sign of diplomatic failure.
Right, because we had the Iranian foreign minister, Abbas Araqi, coming out and sounding, well, somewhat positive. He claimed both sides agreed on a set of guiding principles.
Which sounds nice on camera.
Yeah.
It sounds like progress. It sounds like he's trying to lower the temperature. But then you look at the U.S. side.
Total opposite.
Complete opposite. U.S. officials expressed deep pessimism to reporters. They basically said there was zero progress on any of these substantial differences.
Why the massive gap in the story? Why would one side say, hey, we agree on principles, and the other side say, this was a complete waste of time?
It's a negotiating tactic, basically survival mode. If you are Iran and you see 2 aircraft carriers and 50 brand new jets arriving on your doorstep, you desperately want to create the illusion of a diplomatic off-ramp.
To buy time.
Exactly, to delay the strike. If you go to the press and say, we are making great progress, it makes it politically much harder for the U.S. to launch a massive missile strike tomorrow without looking like the unreasonable aggressor.
But the U.S. clearly isn't buying that narrative.
No, not at all. And we have a direct quote from the source that backs that up. A Trump advisor told Axios that the president is, quote, running out of patience with the stalled nuclear negotiations.
And we all know that phrase, running out of patience, is basically diplomatic code for the clock has hit zero.
Yeah, and that same advisor gave a statistic to the reporters that is, frankly, terrifying.
A 90% quote.
Yes, they estimated a 90% chance that we will see military action in the coming weeks.
90%. That is not a maybe. That is almost a certainty in their eyes. You never hear officials give odds that high on the record, even anonymously.
Usually it's all options are on the table.
Right. We're monitoring the situation. 90% is basically them telling the press corps, get your cameras ready.
And when you check that against the official on-the-record White House stance, it holds up perfectly. Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt said Iran is expected to provide info in the coming weeks. But she notably, very notably, declined to confirm if the U.S. would actually wait that long before striking.
It's like a teacher saying, sure, your homework is due next week, but I might expel you tomorrow.
That's exactly what it is. The timeline for diplomacy and the timeline for military readiness are completely out of sync right now. The military is ready today. Diplomacy wants weeks.
And usually in these historical situations, the side with the aircraft carriers dictates the schedule.
Always.
So we've looked at the stock market, which represents institutional money. We've looked at the military, which represents government action. But I want to pivot to my absolute favorite indicator in times like this.
The gamblers.
The gamblers. The prediction markets.
Let's talk about Polymarket.
Specifically Polymarket, because unlike the stock market, which can be a bit abstract, buying an ETF, these are people betting on a specific binary yes or no question, will the U.S. attack Iran?
And prediction markets are so fascinating because they strip away all the political bias. It is just people putting their own money where their mouth is.
There's no hedging.
No hedging at all. You are either right and you win, or you are wrong and you lose your money.
So what are the odds saying right now?
Well, earlier we mentioned that this weekend, possibility from CBS, the markets are actually a bit skeptical of it happening immediately, like by the absolute end of February. The odds for that were hovering around 20%.
Okay, so a 1 in 5 chance it happens in the next couple of days. That's relatively low, but certainly not zero.
But look at the March 15th contract.
This is where it jumps.
It jumps significantly. The probability of military action by March 15th, so we're talking just 2 weeks from now, is trading at approximately 48 to 51%.
Wow. It is literally a coin flip.
It is a literal coin flip. The crowd is saying there is a 50-50 chance we are in a major war by the Ides of March. And it's not just a few people betting pocket change here. The volume on that March 15th contract is massive.
How massive are we talking?
Over $27 million.
$27 million. Okay, that isn't just kids playing around with crypto on their phones. That represents serious convicted capital.
Yes, it implies that there is a very large, well-funded group of people who are looking at the exact same data we are. The 50 jests, the failed talks, the rhetoric, and they're willing to bet millions that escalation is imminent.
It's really interesting to compare that to the stock market, too, because the stock market is betting on the sectors that benefit from the war, right? Like ammunition and radar.
Right.
But the prediction market is betting on the actual event itself, and both of those arrows are pointing in the exact same direction.
And that's really the synthesis we need to take away from this whole deep dive. You have three separate, distinct data streams converging perfectly.
Laid them out for us.
1. The equity markets. They are buying defense, especially in Europe, anticipating a large-scale sustained conflict.
2. The military reality. You've got heavy assets, carriers, and a sudden massive surge of fighter jets into the region.
And 3. The prediction markets. A $27 million bet that the fuse is already lit and goes off in 2 weeks.
It's almost like a triangulation of intent. You can ignore one signal, maybe it's a blip, you can maybe even ignore two. But when all three line up like this...
It becomes very, very hard to argue that this is just posturing.
So, for the listener right now who is tuning in and absorbing all this, what does this actually mean for them, aside from, nervously watching their retirement portfolio?
I think the biggest takeaway is about understanding how the world actually signals intent. We all get so caught up in the press conferences. We listen to what the press secretary says at the podium.
Right.
But the press conference is often designed to obscure the truth or buy time. The movement of a carrier strike group, that is a truth. The movement of billions in capital, that is a truth.
Yeah.
If you really want to know what is going to happen in the world, don't look at what politicians are saying. Look at what they are physically moving.
That is such a great point. Rhetoric is cheap. Jet fuel is incredibly expensive.
Precisely. And right now, the U.S. is burning a whole lot of jet fuel.
Before we wrap up, I do want to leave you with a thought. We've spent this whole time talking about smart money and market signals, and there is something, I don't know, there's something almost chilling about it.
You mean the morality of the market?
Yeah, exactly. Think about it. When Thales or Lockheed Martin stock goes up 5%, that is thousands of investors effectively voting with their wallets that diplomacy has failed. They are financially incentivized right in that moment for the peace talks in Geneva to fail.
It is the war portfolio.
Yeah.
The market is completely amoral. It does not care about the human cost. It only cares about the final outcome.
But here is the really provocative question for you to mull over. If the smart money bets on war, does that make conflict a self-fulfilling prophecy?
Oh, that's interesting.
Right. If everyone positions themselves for a market crash, the market crashes because everyone sells. If everyone positions themselves for war, does that momentum make war inevitable?
Or, and this is the counter to that, is the market simply the coldest, most accurate mirror we have?
Yeah.
It doesn't cause the reflection. It just shows us the ugly truth before we are actually ready to admit it to ourselves.
Wow. Something to really mull over as you watch the headlines this week and watch where those jets are going. That's it for this deep dive into the war portfolio. Thanks for joining us.
Stay curious, everyone, and stay safe.